Hello everybody, this is Maya Zahira with Psychic Protection Sanctuary, and I am out here on my property out here on the Kansas Prairie, and we are now starting our Facebook Live. The weather is cooperating for now. I think it might start raining, but we'll just go with the flow, no pun intended. If it starts raining, we will just go inside. So this is our monthly Facebook Live in one of my Facebook groups, which is called Spiritual Empowerment Community. This is one of my free groups. And let me just take a second and explain my two groups, because I know sometimes people get confused. And then we will get into our topic. So we're going to have a free class here. So grab your pen and paper if you're joining. So my group, the one that this Facebook Live is in, is Spiritual Empowerment Community. That's one of my two free groups. This group is all about personal empowerment and spiritual empowerment and living in alignment with your soul purpose, living in alignment with what brings you joy, no longer living a disempowered life, whether that means like having terrible boundaries and not communicating clearly with people, sorry, itchy nose, it happens every time I get on live. You know, whether it comes to not having really great boundaries with people, as well as maybe having challenges with your energetic boundaries, your spiritual boundaries. And so all of that is what we talk about in this group. And then my other Facebook group, my other free Facebook group is Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And that group is also a lovely space, but it's a little bit different. We focus more on the more intense kinds of topics like spiritual warfare, paranormal experiences, and that sort of thing. And so for some of you, there's crossover. Some of you are wanting to have more empowerment in your life, and you're also feeling really challenged with, you know, having unwanted spiritual experiences and that sort of thing. And so you'll want to make sure that you're in that group also, which is Psychic Protection Sanctuary. And I created it this way on purpose because there's some people who really want to find more personal empowerment in their lives, and even learn how to manage their energy better. Maybe you're an empath, but you really don't want to get into the more intense stuff. And I have complete respect for that. I totally get it. Like when you're ready for it, you're ready for it. When you're not, you're not. And that's totally cool. And I don't want you to miss out on all this other like really juicy empowerment stuff. So that's why we have it in two separate groups. And my neighbors just got home and the kids are super excited. I don't know what they're doing over there. So yeah, so just a little FYI, because I know some of you have been a little bit confused. So those are my two free groups. And a while back I said that we weren't doing a scheduled official Facebook Live in this group. That was true at the beginning of the year, but now I'm following my inner guidance that it is now time to have a regularly scheduled Facebook Live. So that's what this is. And right now, our regular Facebook Live is going to be on the third Monday, and that's when this is happening right now. So the third Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time, we are having a free class in here. So welcome. I do see that some of you are joining, so definitely say hello and tell us where you're joining from. So as always, I always have notes because I don't get on here to just gab. I know that that's how some people do their Facebook Lives, and that's totally cool. But I get on here and I have a lesson plan. Like, I really want you to get a lot from our time together. So I am going to be looking at my notes. Sorry about that. But I want to make sure that I don't miss anything and that I don't go off on a tangent and forget important stuff. So, but our lesson for today, oh, we got some people joining. Rox is here from Independence, Missouri. Hello there. And I don't know if you've joined one of our Facebook Lives before. I mean, I recognize your name, But if you haven't been to one of our Facebook Lives before, welcome, or welcome back. And Jeannie is joining us from Piper, Kansas, and hello again. So I know we'll have some more people joining us. That's awesome. Before we jump into our lesson, which is all about healthy communication, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. So while we're getting into this, go grab a notebook and a pen, because you will need it. So those of you who are new to me, just also know that if you're wanting to go deeper, you can connect with me on my website, which is psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. So there's a lot of freebie stuff on there, as well as a paid program, etc. So we're going to talk all about Communication 101, specifically how to have a clearing conversation. This is a specific kind of conversation that is intended to help clear things up if there's been a difficult situation, or if there's something that needs to be communicated that hasn't been communicated, or there's some hard feelings, or just at any time there's a challenge in a relationship. So that's what I'm going to be getting to, but I do have some preliminary information that we're going to go over about communication before that. As we all know, communication can be really tricky. One of the tricky parts, and this took me a really long time to understand this, one of the tricky parts is that even if you are brave enough and clear enough to reach out and communicate clearly how you're feeling in a way that's not accusatory, in a way that's really clear and healthy and balanced, even if you're willing to do that, that doesn't mean that the other person is also willing or able. So there are just a lot of people on the planet that they just haven't reached that growth spot yet to where they're able to do it. Maybe they were raised to not speak in a direct way. Like the way that they learned was to stuff everything down and not ever say how they're really feeling. Or maybe what they learned was to be passive aggressive. And there's all sorts of other not so healthy communication techniques that people have learned over the years. I'm not saying that it's an excuse. It's not necessarily an excuse, but it's just an acknowledgement that we need to remember that not everyone is willing or able. They just haven't learned yet, or they haven't grown to the point where they're able to meet you at your level. Okay? So remember that even though I'm going to teach you this technique, not everyone's going to be able to match it, but knowing this technique is going to be super helpful. And if you're in a relationship, whether it's your partner, your spouse, or a good friend or family member, these are things that you could try to teach them. And if they're willing to stretch a little bit and grow, then you can really heal your relationship with each other. The opposite scenario is if you don't communicate clearly with the people in your life when there is an issue, then guaranteed that issue is not going to be cleared up. It's either going to fester until someone completely explodes over something small, or the relationship is eventually going to implode, or you'll just drift apart because there will be so many things that haven't been cleared up, that over the years resentment will grow, and then eventually you just drift away. Okay, so you can probably think of examples of that happening in your life where communication either didn't happen, you were too afraid to speak up, which I understand. I used to be the same way. Or maybe you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, and your way of communicating that you learned growing up was to be super aggressive and to yell and fight, and maybe not approach it from the vantage point of solving the problem, but more just about fighting, which is really a misuse of energy. Well, fighting, that can, I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I'm not saying that fighting is always wrong. You know, when you're in a long-term relationship, it's really only natural that that's going to happen sometimes, and it's a bad sign when fighting never ever happens. It means that at least one person in the relationship is probably never sharing what they really think. So there's one person who's giving in all the time, and that's not going to be healthy. So disagreements are normal, but we want to really come from a place where our goal is to solve the problem and heal the relationship, rather than venting our anger at someone. So anyway, that's just a bit of basic info that I wanted to share with you about communication. Also, oh my gosh, in this day and age with technology, if there is something important that you need to communicate, if there's some kind of issue going on or something that you want to get off your chest, please do not communicate it in a text message, private message on social media, or an email. Like, those are the number one ways to have a miscommunication. So the best way is to have a face-to-face conversation. So if you can meet in person, do that. If you can't, then video conference is fine as well, because you can see each other's faces. It's more of a personal encounter. You know this is true. Sending text messages back and forth, like, it just is not good, right? If you're just doing mundane communication, like, hey, I'll be home by 6 or something like that, that's fine. But trying to solve a problem or communicate something that you're upset about, it's not effective to do it over text message, and you know it, right? Okay, so when we communicate in those ways, with text message, email, private message, then it ends up encouraging misinterpretations and all sorts of distortions and that sort of thing. And even face-to-face communication, there can be misinterpretations and distortions. And I want to talk a little bit about distortions. So a distortion, it's the word that I use to describe, I'm clairvoyant, so I can see energy. And what it will look like to me is there's this like energy between the two people that, instead of it being like nice and clean and clear, it will be all like weird and morphed and distorted. And the reason why that happens sometimes, and oh, by the way, if you just joined, say hi and tell us where you're joining from so we can all meet you. So the reason why these distortions happen is because of personal filters. So I want you to just imagine, just have like a imaginary visualization. So just imagine that in front of you, you have this like filter. It's like crisscross lines, like a grid, right? It's this filter, and that filter, hey Bobby from Kansas City, Missouri, good to see you. So that filter is actually like all of your past hurts, all of the things that trigger you. So those little ouchy spots that you have, it's those things that have happened in the past that have upset you, past traumas, past dysfunctional relationships that you've had with other people, where maybe things were not so healthy. And you even have like trigger words, like if somebody says a phrase or maybe says something in a certain tone, that's triggering for you, even though maybe so-and-so in the past used to do it, but this person that you're with now is a totally different person. So when you have that filter, what they say comes out their mouth and it comes through your filter and it gets all mixed up and distorted. And then what you hear is often different than what they actually said. And Marla is joining us from Wamego, Kansas. Hello, Marla. So we all have filters. It's not like we're pointing our finger saying they have filters. They have the personal filters. They have trauma filters. We all have them. I mean, you know that you've had past situations that definitely influence how you interpret the world. And so it's important that you understand that you have personal filters and that the other person that you're communicating with, they also have personal filters. Now, you can't fix their personal filters, but what you can do is be aware of your own filters and notice when you get triggered and be willing to own the fact that sometimes what's happening is your own stuff, your own internal stuff is getting activated, and it's not actually about the person it's not actually about the other person. It's not even what they said. It's more about your stuff. So that's important to understand your triggers, understand your personal filters. Okay. And then actually I wanted to share this before we get into the clearing conversation. There was a little meme that one of my friends shared on Facebook. I think it was last week. And I really liked it. I think I shared it actually. And the meme said, it had a website on it. So I want to make sure to read that so that I'm giving credit to who wrote the meme. And it's www.nataliebrite.coaching.com. And the meme said, identify how your trigger makes you feel. And then it gives a list. So you might want to write these down. Identify how your trigger makes you feel. Unheard. Judged. Left out. Blamed. Uncared for. Unloved. Controlled. Betrayed. Unimportant. I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel good enough. Of course, there's probably many other things that could be added to the list, but when someone triggers you, oftentimes you'll have one of those feelings, like you felt unheard, you felt judged. That's not how they meant it, but that's how you received it. It went through your personal filter, and that's how you received it, and you got triggered. Okay, so that's a little bit of preliminary info about, because just having a clearing conversation, having a loving, clear conversation with someone isn't quite enough. Like, you do need to be self-aware. You need to understand some of these things that I've just explained. This is just barely touching the tip of the iceberg, you guys. There's so much to learn, but I did want to go ahead and just go over some of this preliminary stuff, just so you can start to think about it, mull it over. So let's get into the clearing conversation. This is a particular technique that can be used when there's an issue, a disagreement, some kind of difficult thing that you need to communicate. Now, a lot of us, and this definitely used to be me, if you're on this group, if you're in this Facebook group, it's likely that you are energetically sensitive, or you're very spiritual, you're very tuned in spiritually, you know, you're very tapped in with your spiritual gifts. But a lot of times, along with those sensitivities, we also have issues with speaking our truth. And we also have issues where we feel other people's stuff so much that we want to just go inside our own turtle shell, and we end up not communicating things that need to be communicated. So, a lot of people that fall into the category that I just described are conflict-phobic. So afraid to say what they really think because they don't want the other person to get upset, or they're just afraid that it won't go well, and also just years of not speaking your truth. So I just want to say that with practice, you can develop the bravery to be able to speak up and speak your truth and have clearing conversations with people. And actually, if you can make yourself do it the first time, the very first time, you'll find that it's actually a really cool thing to do. And once you have a successful conversation with somebody, it'll feel very freeing and exciting, and it will help you have some breakthroughs in some of those throat chakra blocks that many of us have had. And I can say that, as the person teaching you about this, I can say that my entire adult life has been a process of learning to speak my truth, and I definitely did not used to speak my truth. And even as I was speaking my truth more, there would be other areas where I would get totally stuck. And yeah, so it's been, and now I'm 47 now. So, 27 years I've spent, or more than that, spent learning how to speak my truth. So I would say that now, out of any other time in my life, I am the most capable of really being both direct and loving, and to be able to stay grounded, to be able to speak what I really think, and stay grounded no matter how they are responding. So I'm sharing that because I want you to know that from where I started 27 years ago, oh my gosh, I was completely conflict phobic, and even 10 years ago, and even compared to 5 years ago, I was still not as direct as I am now. So no matter where you're starting from, you definitely can make baby steps. It may not take you 27 years like it did me, but just know that, you just keep practicing this, and you keep making strides forward. So grab your pen and paper if you don't have it yet, because I want you to write down about the clearing conversation. So there are steps to this, and let me look at my steps here. Okay, step number 1. You're going to approach your person. Well, you already know, oh man, I really need to talk to so-and-so because I'm feeling upset about blah, 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 or we had this awkward moment, or there's definitely something going on, right? And you want to clear the air because you care about the relationship. And if you don't communicate about it, it's going to keep wearing away at the foundation of the relationship. That's just a fact. So, number 1, you're going to approach the person and ask them to have a clearing conversation. So you can say something like, let's see. So first, so I'm going to give you 3 little mini steps in this step number 1. So you're going to ask to have the conversation. So step A in that would be that you say something about how you care about the relationship. I really care a lot about our relationship and how we're able to work together. Let's say it's a work connection. And then part B would be, are you willing to have a clearing conversation with me? Are you willing to have a clearing conversation with me? And then part C is that you state your intention. I would like to discuss our recent interaction in the break room. Okay, I would like to discuss blah, 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 and clear that up. I would like to discuss blah, 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 and clear that up so that we can continue to have such a great relationship. Okay, so first, you're going to say something affirming about the relationship. So that's A. B, you're going to ask, are you willing to have a clearing conversation? C, state your intention about the conversation. And then you can also say, so if they say, yes, I'm willing, you can say, is now a good time? Because you want to get consent, right? So is now a good time? No, it's not a good time. Okay, so can we do it tomorrow at 10? So you're going to go through those steps, asking to have the conversation. And then when you sit down to have your conversation, you're going to go through these steps. So during the clearing conversation, you're going to first state the facts. So this is the tricky part, because we often want to get into our personal story. And I'll just take a second and explain what your personal story is. Your personal story, those are your thoughts, your interpretations, and your beliefs about what has happened. Your personal story are your thoughts, your interpretations, and your beliefs about what has happened. So, and I like using the word story, because when we say that it's a story, we're implying that it might not be 100% true. It might not be 100% factual. So we're releasing some of our grip, we're releasing some of our attachment onto it, whether it's right or not. So that's what your story is around it. So first, you're going to stick with just the facts. Okay, just the facts. You're going to say, yesterday when I was in the break room, I was walking toward the coffee maker, and I was holding my coffee mug, and I was clearly going to get coffee, and you stepped in front of me. I was going to say butted in front of me, but that's a judgment. So we want to stick with just facts. And you stepped in front of me and poured your own cup of coffee without acknowledging me. Okay, I'm just making up some mundane story. I mean, obviously, real life, usually the situations are bigger than this. But you know what? Even something like that can fester. You know it's true, right? Like some little thing happens, and then like for a year, you feel this little bit of resentment because you have a story in your head about what it meant. And what really may have been happening is that person was like maybe having a bad day. They just weren't very grounded. They weren't paying attention. But meanwhile, you've got this whole story about what a jerk they are and how they don't care about you at all, right? So you're probably thinking of stories when, you're probably thinking of situations where stories like that have happened, right? Okay, so clearing conversation. First thing you're going to do is state the facts. And we're not going into like 50,000 facts. You don't have to cover everything that has ever happened with that person. That's too much. You want to just focus on one thing, state the fact, okay? And then number 2, or part B of number 2, so for the clearing conversation, number 2, part A, state the facts, state the fact. Part B, you're going to share your story about it. Now, don't go into a whole 20-minute monologue. You're going to just share a couple of sentences about your story. Your story, and you're going to say, literally, you say the words, my story is. So first you state the facts, then you say, my story is that you really don't care about me at all, and I'm basically invisible to you. Or whatever, fill in the blank. My story is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's your interpretation of the facts. It's your interpretation. And then part C of the conversation is that you give a sentence or two about your feelings. My feelings are that I feel angry and resentful and blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you state your feelings. And then part D is that you state your desire, what you want. What I want is for us to clear this up so that we can be good work buddies from now on. Now, that's number 2, okay? So step 3 is that the person that you've just shared with, they're going to say to you, are you clear? Like, have you gotten everything off your chest? That's what they're saying. Are you clear? Are you clear, Maya? And Maya is going to say, yes, I think I'm clear. Or no. So if it's no, then I'm going to go through those steps again. Maybe there's more that I need to share. I need to get more off my chest. But I'm going to follow the same. I'm going to state the facts, so I'm going to state another fact. I'm going to state my story about that, my feelings, what I desire, what I want about it. And then that person, oh, I forgot a really important step, you guys. Okay, so first I've done my clearing. I'm sorry, I forgot this step, but it's definitely salvageable. So I've stated everything, the facts, stories, feelings, what I want. And then the person who's listening, they're going to repeat back to me. They're going to say, Maya, what I hear you saying is that yesterday I cut in front of you when you were trying to get coffee, and that you believed that meant that you are not important to me, and it made you feel angry and resentful. Is that right? Is that correct? And then I say, yes, that's correct. And then that person says, are you clear? Are you clear? Like, have you cleared everything? And I'm going to say yes or no. If I say no, then I go through those steps again. If I say yes, now you switch roles, and it's the other person's opportunity to share. And the other person states their fact, shares their story about it, shares their feelings about it, shares their desire, what they want. And then now it's your job to repeat back to them what they just said. And then once you've repeated back to them what they've just said, and you affirm that that's correct, then you're going to ask them, are you clear? And they're going to say yes or no. If they say no, then you honor that they have more that they need to share. And then they share some more and you listen. Okay. So as I'm going, are there any questions about this? I'm going to go through the steps again. This is one of those few videos where it would be better if I had a whiteboard probably. But that's okay. You know, I think you'll survive. So when it's your turn, you're going to state the facts, share your story, your thoughts, interpretations, and beliefs, share your feelings, share your desire, what you want, and then the other person is going to repeat back to you what you just said, and then they're going to ask, are you clear? And when you go through these steps, I don't recommend that you spend, like I said before, like 20 minutes going over a whole bunch of facts, or 20 minutes going into all of your story about it. You want to just really get straight to the point. And Because you probably know from experience that when you go, around and around about your story or about all the millions of things this person has done that have annoyed you, then you don't seem to really get anywhere. So you want to stick to this structure and just state one fact, one thing, and your story about it, 1 or 2 sentences. Don't go into a whole, big long spiel about it, but just a sentence or two about your story and a sentence or two about your feelings. Okay. And then now this taking turns and going back and forth, this can last a while. I had a clearing conversation with somebody several years ago, maybe 8 years ago. And I don't know, I think we were talking for like an hour and a half, something like that. It was quite a while that we were talking. And actually, so you can have a brief conversation, or it can be really extended. And this particular this particular conversation that I'm referring to was one in which I felt like there was a major betrayal that had happened, and I definitely needed to get it off my chest. Like, I couldn't move forward in the relationship at all without putting it all out on the table. And I can't even describe to you how magical it is to be able to use the phrase, I have a story that. And I want you to remember that. Even if you're not officially like doing an official clearing conversation, when you're talking with your partner, and somebody who's close to you, you can at any time use the phrasing, I have a story that, just in the moment. And just using that phrasing is just so powerful and magical, because you can really just share whatever your distortion filter has told you, like whatever has come through your filter and gotten distorted, you can just say that right then in the moment. I have a story that the reason why you said that is because blah, 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 whatever your story is. And so instead of having to like schedule a clearing conversation in the future, when you get brave, when you get able to speak up in the moment, you can just say right away, I have a story that blah, blah, blah. And the person can respond or not respond. But like, even doing that in the moment can make it so you don't even have to have a big long 90-minute or 10-minute or whatever clearing conversation. You can just clear it up right there. So I love that. Let me see if I've missed anything. Do you guys have any questions about any of this? And while I'm waiting to see if there's any questions, I want to talk a little bit more about the bravery of speaking up in the moment. So in the moment when someone says something to you that possibly triggers you, or that you're like, oh my gosh, did they just say that? So I encourage you to practice asking questions. So this is a little different than the clearing conversation. This is more about saying something right in the moment. So back in January, I was in Sedona, and I went out for coffee/tea with a new friend that I had made. And I can't even remember all of the context of the conversation, so it probably doesn't even matter. But there was one thing that she said, and now this is someone who was brand new to me, so I didn't know really how she operated. But she said something where it sounded like she was like really directly insulting me. And I wish I could remember exactly what it was that she said, but I was like, whoa, because she said something like, well, anyone who thinks that is blah, 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 blah. And I was like, whoa, I had just said that I think that, So in the moment, I said, I hear you saying that, blah, blah, blah. And it sounds like you're trying to insult me. Is that what you really meant? So now that takes bravery. That's like advanced placement classes. Remember in high school, the AP classes? That's like advanced placement Earth School communication. In the moment, to be grounded and self-aware that you're like, ooh, something just happened. And for me to be brave enough to say, I hear you say blah, 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 and it sounds like, and I guess I could have said, instead of it sounds like, I could have said, I have a story that, right? But instead I said, it sounds like you are trying to insult me. So I didn't say, you're trying to insult me. It was more like, I'm curious. Is this what's really happening? And that was the tone of voice that I used. And actually, she said, yes, I am. And so it was a very, very odd conversation. And I have a personal rule in my own communication, which is that I don't ever intentionally insult people or call names or anything, or take things out on people. And so our communication styles were very different. And so it was an interesting cup of coffee, and we were not like good buddies or anything. Nothing came of that connection, because I have a personal rule of play fair, and which means that I don't, even if I'm super upset, I don't ever insult someone. I don't call names. I don't take things out on someone. That's my personal rule. But I also acknowledge that not everyone has that rule. Now this brings us back to, at the very beginning of this Facebook Live, I mentioned that just because you're learning healthier, more direct, more open, loving communication, that doesn't mean that everyone you engage with is going to be able to meet you at your level. And I'm not saying that you or I are at this like lofty level or anything like that, but you get what I'm saying, that not everyone is going to be willing or able or know how to, or be emotionally healthy enough to meet you at the level that you're trying to meet them at, communication wise. And when that's the case, then you kind of just have to like let it go, or choose to let it go. If it's a coworker, you're going to have to still work with them, and you're going to have to just be like, oh, well, you have to just kind of move on. If it's someone that you're in partnership with, then that's definitely, there's some work to do there. Maybe therapy or some other ways of helping you connect a little bit better. Because for some, like I mentioned in the beginning, for some people, they've had years of hardwired conditioning of learning to communicate in ways that are not healthy at all. So be realistic. If you, let's say you have a partner or a family member or a good friend or something who you're like, I'm going to do this communication stuff that Maya just taught me, and they're not able to meet you, like they just don't even get it at all, and they're just, you start to try to have a clearing conversation with them, and then they start like yelling at you and calling you names or something because that's what they've learned to do. Don't assume that they will never be able to meet you at your level. It's kind of a discernment process. Like in my case, this like perfect stranger that I had met, back in Sedona, back in January, I'm not really going to go to therapy with her, right? Because we just met. Oh, well. But if this is someone that you're already in, like maybe a business partnership, or it's your spouse or something like that, then it would definitely be worth it to spend some time trying to grow together in your communication. Okay, so questions. Remember that it's a practice, learning how to step up and say what you really think, and doing it in a way that's not accusatory, doing it in a way where you're stating a fact and then sharing your story about it and sharing your feelings. Okay? And learning to even just train your mind to separate those things. That was a big game changer for me. About 12 years ago, I had a friend who used a communication technique, not the same as this, but where he would separate what are the facts, what's my story about it, what are my feelings about it. And that was a big game changer for me, where I was able to really deconstruct what I was upset about so that I could communicate it. And I'm really grateful that I learned that from that friend. Jeannie is saying, that is so brave. And Jeannie says about the Sedona conversation, you did so good. Yeah, well, I did in the moment, but I have to say that with some of her responses, I was definitely a bit flustered because I was like, oh my dear, like I did not expect the outcome, but I did do a good job of speaking up in the moment and just being totally transparent, which I like to be. In the moment, I spoke up right then, but then like when this person wasn't able to meet me at my level, and it got really weird, and so we parted company. And it was like basically for the whole rest of the day, I felt all discombobulated because I was like, oh my God, that was like so upsetting. And so, you know, it's hard for me to even stay grounded 100% of the time when someone is not communicating in the healthiest way. And the other thing that I want to say is remember that it's a practice. So there'll be days where you're really good at staying grounded and being direct. There are other days, or perhaps particular situations, that are more challenging for you, where you find that you're not speaking up and you're not speaking your truth when it's important for you to do so. And you just need to give yourself lots of love and understanding. It takes time. And a lot of us have different reasons why we might be afraid to speak up. I'll just share with you all that for me, I would have a PTSD response in my body. Like I would feel like all my cells were shaking. I would feel scared. I would get like super cold. And it was because when I was growing up, that if I spoke my truth, if it wasn't something that my parents agreed with or wanted to hear, their response was to beat the crap out of us. Now, it was in a different era back then, I understand, but as a sensitive human being that I was, even as a child, that was not a good approach for me. I'll just say that. And so as an adult, it was like literally like beat into me that it's not safe, it's dangerous to speak your truth. And so in situations like that, there's a lot of healing work that needs to be done, whether it's therapy, energy healing, other holistic modalities, earthing. I do a lot of healing of ancestral stuff, just sitting on the earth. So there, you know, for some of us, there are really tangible reasons why we've had hurdles to speaking up. So just be really loving and compassionate and patient with yourself as you make these gentle changes in your life. Patty is saying, great advice, Maya. Love the chimes in the background. Thank you for sharing with all of us. You're welcome. And Jeannie says, great class. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so some of you might be able to relate to some of what I just shared. I think we are all done. And I actually want to let you know, again, just a quick announcement, that we have, I have on my calendar blocked off time the third Monday every month at 6 p.m. Central Time. We are meeting in this Facebook group, Spiritual Empowerment Community, for a free class. It's usually around 45 minutes, sometimes longer, just depends. And so put that on your calendar. I know a lot of people have trouble keeping track. Put it on your Google Calendar as a automatic repeating event, and then you won't forget. And then in my other group, the one that's all about psychic protection and spiritual warfare, it's the Psychic Protection Sanctuary with Maya Zahira. On that group, currently our free Facebook Live class is the second Monday at 6 p.m. Central Time. So you can join that one if you're interested in that. And if not, that is totally cool. Either way, I am here to support you. If you want to find out more about what I do, you can do so on my website, www.psychicprotectionsanctuary.com. And I am here to help you to live a more empowered life, whether it's in your daily 3D living or your spiritual life. I am here to help you to become more empowered. And Marla says, thank you, Maya. Very enlightening for me. Thanks, everybody. And I'm going to go get ready for my evening sessions and online teaching. See you next time. Bye. Oh, I just see one more comment. Bobby says, thank you, Maya. You look like you've been feeling good. I look forward to integrating your tips into my communications. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Bobby. And I will see you all next time. Bye.